Booktube, today I have for you a discussion of Liu Cixin's Ball Lightning. It should have been titled Pandora's Cat, but that prosaic title tells you a lot about some problems with this book. Specifically, I would like to tell you that I'm going to review a science fiction book for you today, except that I don't believe that it is science fiction. And I read it to the very end to find out how it was going to be one. And I think that, as you know, I like to review books that I like, and I think this might be one, maybe the first review of a book I really didn't like. But yeah, so let's get into some of the problems. One of the problems is character. So this is a book about obsession, maybe, or perhaps we could call it control, since ball lightning is such a random occurrence. When it impacts people's lives, some of them spend their life trying to find a way to understand ball lightning, use ball lightning, control ball lightning. And they do it to the exclusion of everything else in their lives, pretty much. And that makes each of the characters very flat and very same. The protagonist doesn't have really anything other than that motivating them. His parents are killed by ball lightning in the very, very beginning of the book. The professor really doesn't have anything other than that, although he has given up on this, his life work of ball lightning, and has tries to hide it, and he's injured, and it's pretty easy to guess that this is a person, when we find out about this story, that this is the person involved. So that's even less interesting, because then we're halfway through the book and we just have the two of them, and they can't talk about ball lightning because the professor's hiding it. Then we have the military character who wants to weaponize it, female character. She's probably the most interesting of the bunch. Her mom was actually killed not by ball lightning, but by what they call like creative weapons. And so her obsession is to create weapons, and she hits on this idea of weaponizing ball lightning. Finally, in the very end, who sort of solves it all and brings in a bit of personality, there's Ding. Ding, I believe, goes on to appear in the Three-Body Problem. He's just a genius, looks a little bit eccentric. But another problem that they all have is that they lack really moral ambiguity. I almost want to say they lack morals. It's not that they have bad morals, it's that this obsession is bigger than any morals. So therefore they'll do, horrible things in search of their obsession. It's sort of like if you think about like a drug addict, right? And so therefore, it's not a likability problem, but it's just the characters are all a bit flat, a bit same. I'm not really sure how the pages get filled. There's dialogue, which is good. It's not a lyrical book. It's not a reflective book. I wish it had been. That would have been the most interesting tone to take with this ball lightning obsession. But these aren't, characters that are shown doing a great deal of ratiocination about this stuff. They have a few breakthroughs, usually sort of very sudden, or it's just mundane science experimenting. And I wish I had the book to quote to you, but I returned it to the library yesterday. So some of you will be glad you'll be spared my quotes. But I did have something from page 99. So very far into the book, and it was a moment when I thought, do I want to continue reading this book? There were just a couple things I wanted to find out, so I read to the end. So I guess I'll give the author that, but I don't think it's a science fiction. Basically, on page 99, there's like a couple, 3-4 paragraphs of bureaucracy, just the most mundane bureaucracy. And then there's also a little bit of sort of the relationships, between characters, a little hierarchy, a little. Anyway, so I thought, if you go to this novel looking for like Chinese science fiction, I'm not sure there's a ton of China in there, other than it's a superpower. Um, Except if there is, it could be in this like bureaucracy and hierarchy, right? Says, I mean, China's had civil service exams for millennia, um, but that doesn't make for a very fascinating reading. I hear people on BookTube talk a lot about pacing. Now, as I think, as if there is just one good pacing solution for all books, which is not the case. There are many reasons for deliberative spacing. Reflection would be one. Uh, Foreshadowing, suspense. Anyway, I don't think it's a pacing problem in that you don't have to be an action-packed sci-fi, right? This is a hard sci-fi, so it leans a lot on science. This is going to be another problem to discuss. But there needs to be some sort of strangeness or something happening fairly regularly to make this not just some people bumbling around the world in committees and labs coats. In fact, they quote at one point Sherlock Holmes saying, "Not everything that is strange is a mystery." But there's not even a lot of strangeness here, other than so the ball lightning happens in the very, very first pages. Then the professors is the next one, and that's told off stage. The vivacity of that is sort of wasted. So we're about 2/3 of the way through the book, and there's really just that's it in terms of action, but more important in terms of strangeness. Or even if the characters had been wondering about it more, so those scenes could have also brought the strangeness in. But he's going to grad school, he's learning physics. It's just, yeah, you really don't have a science, or if it's a science fiction, it definitely doesn't happen until the third part of the book. So you go through an awful lot of pages. Um, yes, so it's not a very lyrical book either. There's not a ton of description. It is quite obvious that Liu is more comfortable in urban environments. You get these urban descriptions are pretty good. Again, I had a good quotation to show this, or sort of juxtaposing a couple pages where it's juxtaposed with like this one line about the nature, like the Gobi Desert or the tundra in Siberia or something, and then at least an interesting discussion of an urban environment. So my favorite part, and again, it is kind of the same character in that his life was impacted by ball lightning. Took his wife, and he worked in the Russian program. They have this massive complex that they set up to study all this stuff, and it's all been sort of shut down. And he's living in his horrible apartment building, and there's no lights that go up to find his room, and it's all just pictures of ball lightnings, floor and ceiling. You picture like Beautiful Mind. But he was the most interesting character in that I feel like you got kind of interested in Russia, and so the descriptions there are a little more alive, and his characters is very interesting. Sort of it felt very Russian to me. Um, for example, the character makes money to keep himself going by he's a scientist, right? So he found these books, like these Soviets published this book, right, in mass quantities that had gold lettering. And so he found a way to wash off the gold lettering and derive the gold from it, and that's sort of how he lives. And he's a hard drinker, and some of it's maybe a little stereotype, but it rang quite true to me in my literary and life experience of sort of Russian, little dour, very sort of a little more philosophical about, the the misery of life. So he was probably the most interesting character, even though he has the same arc or lack of as all the other characters. So that was probably my favorite bit. So the third part, some things happen. Nuclear power plant is taken over by terrorists. I won't spoil what becomes of that, but I do have to explain that setup for you. Anyway, I think it's explaining a setup makes you want to read the book, so I feel like the setups are not spoilers. This is a newer book than I usually review. But yeah, basically, that just felt very random. Nothing happens for 2/3 of the books, and then now we've got this, very short, uh, event where no one's guarding this power plant. And anyway, so yeah. Um, and things continue apace with more and more morally questionable decisions with the weaponizing and the use and even the research risks of capturing ball lightning, weaponizing ball lightning. Um, so let's talk science a little bit. Um, so what kept me going was that in the very beginning, um, the the events are a bit weird, um, and the way ball lightning manifests, everything seems random, but there's certain things that are mentioned that I thought really I wanted to see explained. Like at one point, there's a notebook, and every other page of the notebook was destroyed. They kind of disappear and become ash. Both things first disappear, then become ash. But there's no heat. And sometimes clothes are affected or not affected. Various things like that. So it's never explained. And even though this work very much leans on quantum physics, uh, they capture the electrons and eventually deal with the nucleus, but the author seems to forget that there's more than one balloon in the nucleus. These balloons, there's protons and neutrons, and the strong force, which is not mentioned at all. And he seems to be relying on the electron cloud model more, but I thought surely the shells, and maybe this is why some things are destroyed and others not. But no, that never happens. There's just different types, and they have different colors, which takes forever to. They can't film anything. I don't know why they can't film things, so they have to see. Anyway, and then there's a big, in my opinion, misunderstanding of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, the idea of an observer. This becomes very important. I think that is very much misunderstood. There's a point at which if there's a ghost, you can't see the ghost, right? Because seeing the ghost, destroys the condition of it existing. Um, but basically, yeah, it, it comes in the laptop turns on. This is the big dramatic moment because the laptop was dead because the chips in the laptop were destroyed. Just the chips. I don't know why. Just anyway. And the protagonist is in this sort of hypnagogic state, right, where he's half awake, half asleep. So this is the condition under which he can see it happening, which is why I think it's Pandora's box, or the box with the cat inside that is either alive or not alive. And in our case, it's gonna perhaps open up to hand us a force that can destroy the Earth. However, oh, and by the way, when China finally does go to war with the United States, um, no reason is given. The politics just not interesting, I guess, to you. Um, yeah, so seemingly forgetting that we've had weapons of mass destruction for a long time, nuclear weapons, um, and you know We haven't blown each other up yet. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about this work. I can't call it magical realism because it's realism. It's just a real world with one tiny little extra science tweak. And that tweak doesn't feel magical. Um, and so I don't know, based on this work, if I'm going to go on to read the three body problem. I would have to pay for it to track it down because this was the only one they had in our library. But I think that this has sort of put me off. Just not enough to make me think or make me excited or wonder in a big fat thick book with some events and some characters, but really one character and mostly boring committees and reports and subcommittees. Trust me, a lot of that. So there you go. So that's, and the symbolism, I couldn't find much. The attack group of the PLA is Ba Yi is 81. Ba is, sometimes in China you won't have the 8th floor button in the elevators like our 13th because Ba is like a hell of a death. So I don't know if that was, I think it's a real unit, so I'm not even sure I can give credit for that as a symbol. Otherwise, there's not much. Read it if you like. You'll know what you're going in for now. And perhaps you'll disagree with me and find more in it than I found. I hope you will if you do read it, because I think we should read books that we enjoy. I see a lot of people reviewing tons of books that they don't like, all these rant reviews in a row. As you can, if you've watched much of any of the videos that I make, you'll see that I'm always reading books that I love. I'm pretty good at picking them. But this is the second one that I was a little bit influenced by BookTube, the other being Midnight Library, which had problems, but I liked okay. And this one had problems, and yeah. As the kids like to say, so yeah, but yeah. All right.